The silver moon hung low over the Utah Territory as Melissa Turner staggered along the dusty road leading to Kelton, her face bearing the angry marks of a man's cruelty. One eye was nearly swollen shut, her bottom lip split and crusted with dried blood, and a dark bruise bloomed across her left cheekbone like a violent storm. Despite her battered appearance, her arms cradled her swollen belly protectively, a belly that carried not one life but two. Her unborn twins, the only treasure she had left in this harsh world of 1876. The distant glow of lanterns from Kelton's Main Street beckoned like a lighthouse to a drowning sailor. Melissa had walked for miles after jumping from the slow-moving freight train, her husband's threats still ringing in her ears. 3 years of marriage to Edward Blackwell had taught her that his promises were as empty as the whiskey bottles he left scattered around their home in Sacramento. His last beating had been the final straw, the one that made her fear not just for herself, but for the innocent lives growing inside her. Melissa stumbled, catching herself against a fence post as a sharp pain radiated through her abdomen. At 7 months along, she knew the babies weren't due yet, but the stress of her escape and the long journey had taken its toll. She needed help, shelter, a safe place where Edward couldn't find her. "Madam? Madam, are you all right?" The voice startled her, deep and concerned. Melissa's head jerked up to see a tall figure approaching on horseback, silhouetted against the evening sky. She instinctively shrank back, raising an arm to shield her face. "Don't be afraid," the man said, dismounting with fluid grace that spoke of a lifetime in the saddle. As he stepped closer, the moonlight revealed a weather-worn face beneath the brim of a well-used Stetson. His eyes, sharp and clear as mountain water, widened at the sight of her battered face and pregnant form. "I'm Yates Vance," he said softly, keeping his distance as one might with a wounded animal. "Town marshal here in Kelton." He gestured to the silver star pinned to his buckskin vest. Melissa swallowed hard, her throat dry from hours without water. "Melissa Turner," she whispered, "I need somewhere to stay." Marshal Vance's expression darkened as he took in her injuries, his jaw tightening beneath his neatly trimmed beard. "Your husband do this to you?" he asked, though it wasn't really a question. She nodded once, unable to find words. The marshal's gaze fell to her swollen belly, understanding dawning in his eyes. He took off his hat, revealing dark hair with touches of silver at the temples. "You'll never be hit again," he said with quiet certainty. "Not while I draw breath in this town." Those simple words, spoken with such conviction by a stranger, broke something inside Melissa. Tears welled up and spilled down her cheeks, stinging the cuts on her face. "Come on," Vance said gently, returning his hat to his head. "I know a place where you'll be safe. Can you ride?" Melissa hesitated, then shook her head. "The babies, I don't think I should." Yates nodded thoughtfully. "All right then. Town's just a quarter-mile down this road. I'll walk with you, lead my horse. Take your time." As they made their slow way toward Kelton, Melissa felt the weight of the marshal's silent protection beside her. She didn't know this man, this town, or what tomorrow would bring. But for the first time in years, she allowed herself to hope. The widow Abigail Porter had run the only boarding house in Kelton for 15 years, ever since her husband died in a mining accident in '61. Her establishment was clean, respectable, and the best option for a woman in Melissa's condition. "Abby," Marshal Vance called as he guided Melissa through the front door. "Got someone here needs help." The plump, gray-haired woman emerged from the back room, wiping flour-covered hands on her apron. Her expression shifted from curiosity to concern in an instant. "Lord have mercy," she breathed, rushing forward. "You poor child. What happened to you?" Before Melissa could answer, another sharp pain gripped her, causing her to double over with a gasp. "She's carrying twins," Yates explained, supporting Melissa's weight as she struggled to remain standing. "And she's been hurt, needs a safe place to stay." "Of course she does," Abigail declared, all business now. "Bring her upstairs, Yates. Second room on the left, it has the biggest bed." Within minutes, Melissa found herself settled on a clean, soft mattress, while Abigail shooed the marshal from the room, instructing him to fetch Dr. Frederick Jenkins immediately. "Don't you worry about payment," Abigail told Melissa firmly when she tried to explain that she had only a few dollars to her name. "We'll sort all that out later. Right now, we need to make sure you and those babies are all right, Doctor." Jenkins arrived promptly, his medical bag in hand and a concerned frown on his face. He was a man in his 50s with kind eyes and gentle hands as he examined Melissa's injuries and then her pregnancy. "The twins seem stable for now," he announced after his examination, "but you're showing signs of early labor. Could be from stress or the physical trauma. Either way, bed rest is absolutely necessary." "For how long?" Melissa asked, panic rising in her chest. "She couldn't stay in one place too long. Edward would come looking." "At least 2 weeks," the doctor replied firmly. "And that's if things improve. Otherwise, until those babies are born." After the doctor left, Abigail helped Melissa into a clean nightgown and brought her a tray with hot soup and fresh bread. "You eat now," she instructed. "Then rest. Everything looks worse on an empty stomach and with no sleep." When Melissa had finished eating, she heard a soft knock at the door. Marshal Vance stood in the hallway, hat in hand. "Wanted to check on you before I make my night rounds," he explained. "Thank you," Melissa said softly, "for everything." The marshal shook his head. "No need for thanks. It's what any decent person would do." He hesitated, then added, "Mrs. Turner, I need to ask, is your husband likely to come looking for you?" Melissa's hands trembled as she clutched the blanket. "Yes. His name is Edward Blackwell. He's a gambling man. Works the riverboats mostly, but he has connections. When he's been drinking, there's no reasoning with him." She touched her bruised face unconsciously. "This happened when I told him I was carrying twins. He accused me of being with another man. Said one child was all he gave me." Disgust flashed across Yates's face before he controlled his expression. "I'll keep watch. Kelton's small enough that strangers stand out. If he shows up, we'll be ready." "He's dangerous," Melissa warned. "He carries a knife in his boot and a small pistol inside his coat." "So do most men out here," Yates replied with a slight smile. "Difference is, I uphold the law, not break it." "You rest easy tonight, Mrs. Turner." As he turned to leave, Melissa called after him, "Please, call me Melissa." The marshal nodded, a warm light touching his eyes. "Melissa, sleep well." Over the next few days, Melissa's body began to heal, though her mind remained constantly alert for danger. Abigail proved to be not just a landlady, but a friend, bringing small comforts to the room and sitting with Melissa for hours, sharing stories of Kelton and its people. On her 4th day at the boarding house, Melissa was sitting up in bed, a book in her hands, when Abigail entered with a wrapped package. "Marshal Vance brought this for you," she said with a knowing smile. "Said he noticed you didn't have many belongings." Inside the package, Melissa found 2 simple cotton dresses, clearly new, sized to accommodate her pregnancy, and a wooden hairbrush with a polished handle. "He went all the way to Brigham City to get these," Abigail commented. 40 miles round trip." Melissa ran her fingers over the soft fabric, touched beyond words by the thoughtful gesture. No man had ever shown her such kindness without expecting something in return. When Yates visited that evening, Melissa thanked him profusely for the gifts. "It was nothing," he insisted. his hat turning slowly in his hands as he stood awkwardly by her bedside. "Just practical things you might need." "Tell me about yourself, Marshal," Melissa said, curious about this quiet man who had shown her such compassion. Yates shifted uncomfortably. "Not much to tell. Fought in the war Union side, came west afterward. Been Marshal here going on 8 years now. No wife, family," a shadow crossed his face. "Had a wife, Sarah. Yellow fever took her in '67. No children." "I'm sorry," Melissa said softly. Yates nodded, accepting her sympathy with quiet dignity. "What about you? Before him," Melissa sighed, memories of a simpler time washing over her. "I grew up in Missouri. My father was a school teacher. Mother died when I was 16. Father followed 3 years later. I was working as a seamstress when I met Edward. He was charming then, full of big dreams and promises. We married 3 weeks after meeting." "When did he change?" Yates asked gently. 6 months in," Melissa replied, her voice hollow with the memory. "Lost heavily at cards, came home drunk. That was the first time he hit me." She looked down at her swollen belly. "I kept thinking he'd change back to the man I thought I married, especially when I told him about the baby. Instead, things got worse." A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only when one of the babies kicked hard enough for Melissa to gasp in surprise. "Everything all right?" Yates asked, immediately concerned. Melissa smiled, the first genuine smile he had seen from her. "Yes, they're just active today." On impulse, she reached for his hand. "Would you like to feel?" Yates hesitated, then extended his hand. Melissa placed it gently on the side of her belly where the movement was strongest. A moment later, a firm kick pressed against his palm. The Marshal's face transformed with wonder. "Strong little ones you've got there," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "They'll need to be," Melissa replied quietly. As the days passed, Melissa's strength slowly returned. Dr. Jenkins visited regularly, pleased with her progress and the development of the twins. The early labor signs had subsided, but he maintained his order for bed rest, allowing her only short periods of sitting in a chair by the window. From this vantage point, Melissa could observe the daily rhythms of Kelton. She watched Yates making his rounds, stopping to chat with shopkeepers and townsfolk, helping an elderly man load supplies into his wagon, breaking up a minor dispute outside the saloon. He carried his authority lightly but firmly, respected by all. Each evening, without fail, he would visit her room, sometimes bringing small gifts, a book from the general store, wildflowers gathered from the prairie, fresh peaches from a passing trader. They talked about everything and nothing the town gossip Abigail shared, news from the recent edition of the Salt Lake Tribune, memories of their lives before fate brought them to this moment. Melissa found herself looking forward to these visits with an eagerness that both comforted and frightened her. She had sworn never to trust a man again, yet here she was, opening her heart to this quiet lawman with the gentle hands and steadfast principles. 2 weeks after her arrival in Kelton, Dr. Jenkins finally gave Melissa permission to venture downstairs for meals, provided she returned to bed afterward. That evening, she joined Abigail and her other boarders, a railroad clerk named Timothy, an elderly prospector called Old Pete, and a young school teacher named Catherine at the dinner table. The conversation flowed easily around her. These strangers turned friends, asking her about her health, but respectfully avoiding questions about her past. Halfway through the meal, the front door opened, and Marshal Vance stepped in, removing his hat as he entered. "Evening, folks," he greeted, his eyes finding Melissa immediately. "Good to see you up and about, Mrs. Turner." "Join us, Yates," Abigail invited, already rising to fetch another plate. "There's plenty." Dinner was a lively affair. with old Pete regaling them with improbable tales of his prospecting days, and Catherine sharing amusing anecdotes about her young pupils. Melissa found herself laughing for the first time in months, the sound strange but welcome to her ears. After dinner, while the others retired to the parlor, Yates offered Melissa his arm for a short walk on the porch. "Doctor's orders say you need fresh air," he explained with a slight smile. The evening was cool but pleasant, the vast Utah sky ablaze with stars. They stood in comfortable silence for several minutes, watching the last remnants of daylight fade from the horizon. "Thank you," Melissa said suddenly. Yates looked at her questioningly. "For what?" "For making me feel human again. For treating me like a person, not a possession or a burden." The Marshal's expression softened. "You are remarkable, Melissa Turner," he said quietly. "To endure what you have and still find the strength to leave, to protect your children, that takes courage few possess." Before she could respond, a sharp pain seized her abdomen, different from before, more intense. She gasped, clutching the porch railing for support. "Melissa!" Alarm filled Yates's voice as he steadied her with a strong arm around her waist. "The babies," she managed between clenched teeth. I think they're coming." "But it's too early," Yates protested, panic edging his usually calm demeanor. 6 weeks, Melissa confirmed as another pain gripped her. "Get Dr. Jenkins." "Hurry." The next few hours passed in a blur of pain and fear. "Doctor." Jenkins arrived quickly, his face grave as he examined Melissa, now back in her room with Abigail and Catherine helping her through the increasingly frequent contractions. "The babies are definitely coming," the doctor confirmed. "First one is already engaged. There's no stopping it now." "But they're early," Melissa cried, terror for her unborn children overwhelming her. "Will they survive?" Dr. Jenkins squeezed her hand reassuringly. "Twins often come early, and you're far enough along that they have a good chance. They'll be small but strong, just like their mother." Outside in the hallway, Yates paced relentlessly, flinching at each cry that escaped from behind the closed door. Old Pete and Timothy had retreated to the parlor, uncomfortable with the situation, but the Marshal refused to leave. "Shouldn't be happening like this," he muttered to himself. "She's been through enough." The labor progressed rapidly. Shortly after midnight, a thin, reedy cry pierced the night the first twin had arrived. 30 minutes later, a second cry joined the first. It was nearly an hour before the door finally opened and Catherine emerged, her apron stained but a smile on her tired face. "You can come in now, Marshal, just for a moment. She's asking for you." Yates entered the room hesitantly. Melissa lay propped against pillows, her face pale and damp with sweat but radiant with an inner light he had never seen before. In her arms, she cradled 2 tiny bundles wrapped in clean white cloths. "A boy and a girl," she whispered as he approached. "Both small but healthy, the doctor says." Yates stood beside the bed, overcome with emotion at the sight of the new mother and her children. "They're beautiful," he said, his voice thick, "just like their mama." Melissa smiled wearily. "Would you like to hold one?" Before he could answer, Abigail was placing the smaller bundle, the girl, in his arms. Yates cradled the tiny infant with surprising confidence, marveling at the perfect miniature features and the wisp of dark hair on her head. "What will you name them?" he asked softly, unable to take his eyes off the baby in his arms. Melissa looked down at her son. "This is Benjamin, after my father." Then her eyes rose to her daughter in the Marshal's arms. "And that's Hope, because that's what you gave me when you found me on the road that night." Yates swallowed hard against the lump in his throat. "Fine names," he managed. "Strong names." The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of activity as Melissa adjusted to motherhood, and the twins gained strength daily. Dr. Jenkins visited often, pleased with their progress despite their early arrival. "You're a natural mother," he told Melissa during one checkup. "And those babies are fighters." Yates became a constant presence, stopping by the boarding house between his duties to check on Melissa and the twins. He held the babies with increasing confidence, walking the floor with them when they were fussy, giving Melissa precious moments of rest. One evening, as Melissa sat in a rocking chair by the window, nursing Benjamin while Yates held a sleeping Hope, she voiced the fear that had been growing inside her. "He'll find me eventually," she said quietly. "Edward. He won't let me go so easily, especially now that the babies are born." Yates's expression hardened. "Let him come. Kelton's my town. You're under my protection here." "I can't stay forever," Melissa pointed out. "I need to find work, make a life for us." "Why not here?" Yates asked. "Kelton's growing. The railroad brings new people through every day." Catherine mentioned the school board is looking for a second teacher. "With your father being an educator, surely you learned enough to teach the little ones." The idea took root in Melissa's mind. Teaching had always been her dream, before circumstances forced her into sewing for a living. "Do you really think they'd hire me? A woman alone with 2 infants. This isn't California," Yates replied with a smile. "Folks out here judge by character and capability, not circumstances. Besides, you won't be alone. You have friends here now." The look in his eyes as he said this made Melissa's heart flutter in a way she had thought impossible after Edward's betrayal. She quickly lowered her gaze to Benjamin's nursing form, afraid to acknowledge the growing feelings between them. 2 days later, Catherine arranged a meeting with the school board. Despite her nervousness, Melissa impressed them with her knowledge and quiet determination. By the end of the week, she had been offered the position of assistant teacher, to begin once the twins reached 3 months of age. "It's not much pay," she told Yates that evening as they sat on the boarding house porch, the twins asleep inside under Abigail's watchful eye. "But it's a start, enough for a small place of our own eventually." "I'm proud of you," Yates said simply, his hand finding hers in the gathering twilight. Their fingers entwined naturally, comfortably, and neither pulled away. They sat in silence as the stars appeared one by one above them, each lost in thoughts of a future neither had dared imagine just weeks before. The peace was shattered 3 days later when Timothy burst into the boarding house during breakfast, his face flushed with excitement and worry. "Marshal," he addressed Yates, who had taken to joining them for morning meals. "There's a man at the station asking questions about a woman with twins. Says his wife ran off, that she's not right in the head, dangerous to the children." The blood drained from Melissa's face. "Edward," she whispered, clutching Hope closer to her breast while Benjamin slept in a cradle nearby. Yates was on his feet instantly, buckling on his gun belt. "Stay inside," he ordered. "Lock the doors." He turned to Timothy. "What does he look like?" "Tall, well-dressed. Dark hair, fancy mustache. Has a slight limp in his left leg, carrying a walking stick with a silver handle." "That's him," Melissa confirmed, terror evident in her voice. "Yates, be careful. He's cunning and he won't hesitate to hurt you if you stand in his way." The marshal's eyes were steel as he checked his revolver. "I've dealt with his kind before. Lock up behind me, Abigail. No one enters until I return." Melissa caught his arm as he turned to leave. "Please, don't kill him, not for my sake. I don't want that blood on your hands." Yates's expression softened slightly as he looked down at her. "I'm a lawman, Melissa. I'll handle this properly." He hesitated, then bent swiftly to press a kiss to her forehead. "Trust me." With that, he was gone, the front door closing firmly behind him. Abigail immediately turned the key in the lock and drew the bolt. "Come away from the windows," she instructed Melissa. "Timothy, help me pull the curtains." The next hour was the longest of Melissa's life as she paced the parlor, alternating between nursing the twins and straining to hear any sound from the street. Catherine and old Pete had joined them, the school closed for the day, and the mining supplies forgotten as they all kept vigil. Finally, the sound of approaching footsteps on the porch made them all freeze. A firm knock followed. "Abigail, it's Yates. Open up." The widow hurried to unlock the door, relief evident on her face. The marshal entered alone, his expression unreadable as he removed his hat. "Is he gone?" Melissa asked immediately, clutching hope to her chest. "He's in the jail," Yates replied, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Turns out your husband is wanted in California for assault and theft. Had a wanted poster come through last week that I hadn't hung yet. Did he? Was there trouble?" Melissa asked, noting the marshal's split knuckles and the dust on his usually immaculate clothing. "He objected to being arrested," Yates said simply. "I persuaded him otherwise." "What happens now?" Abigail asked, voicing the question on everyone's mind. "California authorities have been telegraphed. They'll send someone to collect him within the week." Yates turned to Melissa. "You'll need to provide a statement about his abuse. It will strengthen the case against him." Melissa nodded, a complex mixture of emotions washing over her. Relief, fear, and something else, a burgeoning sense of freedom she had not felt in years. "Can I see him?" she asked suddenly, surprising even herself with the request. Yates frowned. "Why would you want to?" "I need to," Melissa explained, unable to articulate fully the compulsion she felt. "I need to face him one last time on my terms, to end it properly." The marshal studied her for a long moment, then nodded reluctantly. "All right, but not alone. I'll be with you every second." An hour later, after Catherine had offered to watch the twins, Yates escorted Melissa to the small jailhouse at the edge of town. The building was simple, a sheriff's office in front with 2 cells in the back, separated by a heavy wooden door. "He's secured," Yates assured her as he unlocked this door. "Can't reach you through the bars. If he says anything threatening, we leave immediately." Melissa steeled herself as the door swung open, revealing 2 small cells. Edward sat on a cot in the far one, his once immaculate suit rumpled, a dark bruise forming on his jaw. He looked up as they entered, his eyes narrowing with malice when he saw Melissa. "So this is where you've been hiding," he sneered, rising to approach the bars. "Playing house with the local lawman while my children are born." "They're my children, Edward," Melissa replied, her voice steadier than she had expected. "And they'll never know your cruelty." Edward's handsome face twisted with rage. "You think you can keep them from me? I'm their father." "I have rights." "Rights?" Melissa echoed incredulously. "What rights does a man have who beats his pregnant wife, who gambles away their food money, who threatens to kill her if she leaves?" She stepped closer to the cell, aware of Yates tensing beside her but drawing strength from his presence. "You have no power over me anymore," she continued, meeting Edward's gaze directly. "I'm not afraid of you, I pity you." "You ungrateful whore," Edward spat, lunging toward the bars. "After everything I gave you, that's enough," Yates interjected, his hand moving to rest on his revolver. "One more word like that, Blackwell, and you'll be eating through broken teeth until the California marshals arrive." Edward's eyes shifted to Yates, calculating and cold. "So that's how it is. My wife spreads her legs for you, and suddenly you're all righteous defense." Melissa felt rather than saw Yates step forward, his body rigid with anger. She placed a restraining hand on his arm. "He wants you to hit him," she said quietly. "So he can claim brutality, make trouble for you. He's not worth it." The marshal relaxed slightly under her touch, though his eyes never left Edward's sneering face. "You've said what you came to say," Yates told Melissa gently. "Let's go." As they turned to leave, Edward called after them, "This isn't over, Melissa. Those are my children. You think some backwater marshal can protect you forever? I'll find you wherever you go." Yates paused at the door, looking back at the prisoner. "No, you won't," he said with quiet certainty. "Because after California is done with you, there are 3 other states with warrants for your arrest. I checked the wires this morning. You'll be an old man before you see freedom again, if ever." The color drained from Edward's face at this news, his bluster evaporating as the reality of his situation sank in. Outside in the clear Utah sunshine, Melissa took a deep breath, feeling as though a great weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "Thank you," she said, turning to Yates, "for letting me face him. I needed that closure." The marshal nodded, his expression softening as he looked at her. "You were magnificent in there, brave and dignified. He couldn't touch you." "Because I wasn't alone," Melissa replied, meeting his gaze steadily. Something shifted between them in that moment, an unspoken acknowledgement of feelings that had been growing since that first night on the road to Kelton. "Melissa," Yates began, his voice rough with emotion, "I know it's too soon. You've been through hell and back, and you've got those babies to think about. But I want you to know," he paused, searching for the right words, "I care for you, more than I thought possible after losing Sarah, and I'll wait, however long you need." Tears welled in Melissa's eyes, not of sorrow but of a cautious joy she had thought forever beyond her reach. "I care for you too, Yates. But you're right, it is too soon. I need time to heal, to find myself again, to be a mother to my children." "Take all the time you need," he assured her, gently brushing a tear from her cheek. "I'm not going anywhere." The following days brought rapid changes. 4 days after his arrest, Edward was transferred to the custody of California marshals, leaving Kelton in shackles and defeat. Melissa watched from the boarding house window as the wagon carrying him disappeared down the road, feeling the final ties to her past life severing with his departure. With Edward gone, and the twins growing stronger each day, Melissa began making plans for their future in Kelton. The school board had held the teaching position for her, and Abigail offered to watch the babies during school hours once Melissa started work. "They're like my own grandchildren," the widow declared, cuddling Benjamin with practiced ease. "Besides, what else would I do with my days?" Count dust motes. 2 weeks after Edward's departure, Yates arrived at the boarding house with news. "There's a small house available," he told Melissa as they sat in the parlor, the twins asleep in their cradles nearby. "Just at the edge of town. 2 rooms, decent condition. Owner's moving to Oregon and needs to sell quickly." "I couldn't possibly afford to buy a house," Melissa protested. "The teaching salary will barely cover rent and necessities." "It's already taken care of," Yates replied, looking slightly uncomfortable. "I bought it." Melissa stared at him in shock. "Yates, I can't accept such a gift, it's too much." "It's not a gift," he clarified quickly. "It's an investment. You'll pay rent to me same as you would to any landlord. Difference is, I won't raise the rate or sell it out from under you." He hesitated, then added, "And someday when you're ready, well, maybe it could be our home, not just yours." The implication of his words hung in the air between them, a promise of a future together that neither was quite ready to voice directly. "I'd like to see it," Melissa said finally, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. The house was indeed small but solidly built, with a front room that served as kitchen and living area, and a bedroom large enough for Melissa's bed and the twins' cradles. A covered porch wrapped around 2 sides, offering shade in summer and shelter in winter. The yard, though overgrown, held fruit trees and space for a kitchen garden. "It's perfect," Melissa breathed as Yates showed her around the property. "Truly perfect." "There's one more thing," the marshal said, leading her to a small structure behind the house that she had assumed was an outhouse. Instead, it was a tiny workshop with windows on 3 sides providing ample light. "I remember you said you were a seamstress before," Yates explained. "Thought you might want space to keep your hand in, maybe make extra money if teaching doesn't work out." Tears sprang to Melissa's eyes at his thoughtfulness. "You've thought of everything." "Not everything," he admitted with a crooked smile. "Still haven't figured out how to make decent coffee. Abigail says mine tastes like saddle soap." Melissa laughed, the sound bright and free in the afternoon sunlight. On impulse, she rose on tiptoe to press a soft kiss to his cheek. "Thank you, Yates, for everything." His arm slipped naturally around her waist, holding her close for a moment before reluctantly releasing her. "Move-in day is whenever you're ready," he told her. "No rush." 2 weeks later, with the help of most of Kelton's residents, Melissa and the twins moved into their new home. Women from the church brought food, curtains, and small household items. Men carried furniture donated by various townsfolk or purchased by Yates from passing traders. By sundown, the house was transformed into a home, simple but welcoming. That evening, after everyone had gone and the twins were fed and sleeping, Melissa sat on her new porch with Yates beside her, watching the stars emerge in the vast Utah sky. "Happy?" he asked softly. "More than I ever thought possible," she replied honestly. 3 months ago, I was desperate and terrified, running for my life and the lives of my unborn children. Now," she gestured to the house, the peaceful yard, the sleeping town beyond. "Now I have a home, a future, friends, safety." "And more," Yates added, his hand finding hers in the gathering darkness. "You have people who care about you, who love you." The word hung between them, neither bold enough yet to claim it directly. "Yes," Melissa agreed, squeezing his hand. "And that's the greatest gift of all." As summer faded into autumn, Melissa settled into her new life with growing confidence. The twins thrived, developing distinct personalities even at their young age. Benjamin was serious and observant, while Hope was curious and quick to smile. Melissa began teaching at the small schoolhouse, finding joy in educating the town's children 3 days a week, while Catherine taught the other 2. Yates remained a steady presence in their lives, visiting daily, often bringing small treats for the twins and news from around town for Melissa. Their relationship developed slowly, respectfully, both aware of the weight of their pasts and the promise of their future. On a crisp October evening, with the twins nearly 4 months old, Yates invited Melissa for a short ride outside town. Abigail agreed to watch the babies, shooing them out the door with a knowing smile. "They'll be fine," she assured Melissa, who was leaving detailed instructions about feeding times. "Go enjoy yourself for once. You're a mother, not a prisoner." Yates had brought a gentle mare for Melissa to ride, and they set off at an easy pace, following a narrow trail that wound through golden aspens toward the foothills. "Where are we going?" Melissa asked, enjoying the rare freedom of being away from her responsibilities, if only for a few hours. "There's a place I want to show you," Yates replied mysteriously. "Not much further." The trail opened suddenly into a small, hidden valley, carpeted with late wildflowers and sheltered by rocky outcroppings. A clear stream tumbled over smooth stones, creating a peaceful melody that blended with the rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze. "It's beautiful," Melissa breathed as Yates helped her dismount. "How did you find it?" "Tracked a lost calf here years ago," he explained, spreading a blanket on a flat rock beside the stream. "Come sit. I brought food." They shared a simple meal of bread, cheese, and apples, talking easily about the town, the twins, Melissa's students. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Yates grew unusually quiet. "Is something wrong?" Melissa asked, noticing the change in his demeanor. "No," he assured her quickly. "Nothing's wrong, just thinking about how much has changed since that night I found you on the road." Melissa nodded, her own mind drifting back to that pivotal moment. "You saved us," she said softly. "Me and the twins. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't come along when you did." "You would have found a way," Yates replied with certainty. "You're the strongest person I know, Melissa Turner." He reached into his pocket, withdrawing a small object that he held tightly in his palm. "I've been carrying this around for weeks, waiting for the right moment," he admitted. "Maybe there isn't a perfect time. Maybe now is as good as any." Opening his hand, he revealed a simple gold ring with a small ruby set in the center. "It was my mother's," he explained. "She gave it to me before she died, said to give it to the woman who captured my heart." His eyes, earnest and vulnerable, met hers. "That's you, Melissa. I love you. I love Benjamin and Hope as if they were my own. I want to build a life with you if you'll have me." Tears filled Melissa's eyes as emotion welled up within her. "Are you sure?" she whispered. "A ready-made family with all our complications." "I've never been more certain of anything," Yates answered without hesitation. "I don't see complications when I look at you and the twins. I see my future, my home, my heart." Melissa took his face between her hands, her eyes searching his. "I love you too, Yates Vance," she said, her voice steady and sure. "Yes, yes, I'll marry you." The kiss they shared was tender and sweet, a promise of the life they would build together. As they rode back to town in the fading light, Melissa felt a contentment she had never known before, the certainty of being truly loved, respected, and cherished. They were married 2 weeks later in Kelton's small church, with the entire town in attendance. Abigail stood as Melissa's witness, holding Hope while Benjamin was cradled in old Pete's arms. Catherine played the church organ, and the schoolchildren formed an honor guard, throwing flower petals as the newlyweds exited the church. That evening, after a celebration at the town hall and many congratulations from their friends and neighbors, Yates carried the twins to their cradles in what was now their family home. Melissa watched from the doorway as her new husband tenderly tucked blankets around the sleeping infants, marveling at how naturally he had stepped into the role of father. "They're lucky to have you," she said softly as he joined her. "We all are." Yates drew her into his arms, his expression serious. "I made you a promise that first night," he reminded her, "that you'd never be hit again. I intend to keep that promise for the rest of our lives." "I know you will," Melissa replied, rising on tiptoe to kiss him. "Just as I promised to love and trust you always. We've both been given a second chance at happiness, Yates. Let's make the most of every day." And they did. As the seasons changed and the years passed, the Vance family became a cornerstone of Kelton society. Melissa continued teaching, eventually becoming headmistress of the growing school. Yates served as marshal until Benjamin and Hope were 10, then retired to open a successful horse breeding operation that supplied mounts for the army and local ranchers. The twins grew strong and true, benefiting from both Melissa's gentle wisdom and Yates's steady guidance. 2 years after their marriage, the family welcomed another child, a son they named Samuel, who inherited his father's quiet strength and his mother's compassionate heart. On the twins' 16th birthday, as the family celebrated with a picnic in the hidden valley that had become their special place, Hope asked the question that had been on her mind for years. "Did you ever regret it, Mama, running away from our real father?" Melissa exchanged a glance with Yates, who sat with 10-year-old Samuel on his knee, listening intently. "Yates is your real father in every way that matters," Melissa replied carefully. "The man who gave you life. He wasn't capable of being a father or a husband." I've never regretted leaving him, not for a single moment. Were you scared? Benjamin asked, his serious eyes so like Yates's it sometimes startled Melissa. When you left, not knowing where you'd end up. Terrified, Melissa admitted honestly. But sometimes the bravest thing you can do is take that step into the unknown, trusting that something better waits on the other side. Like Marshal Vance, Hope said with a smile, using the title the twins still sometimes teased their father with. Like your father, Melissa agreed, reaching for Yates's hand. Who taught me that love doesn't hurt, it heals? Who showed me that a man's strength isn't measured by his ability to control others, but by his capacity to protect and nurture them? And who got the best deal of all? Yates added with a wink to the children, gaining 3 incredible people to love in one fell swoop. As they packed up their picnic and prepared to head home, Melissa paused to watch her family Benjamin helping Samuel onto his horse, Hope laughing at something Yates had said, the sun glinting off their hair and the future bright in their eyes. From a desperate woman staggering along a dusty road, bruised and afraid, to this moment of perfect contentment, the journey had not been easy, but it had led her exactly where she was meant to be. Coming, love, Yates called, extending his hand to help her mount. Yes, Melissa replied, taking his hand and the future it promised. I'm right where I belong. 20 years after that fateful night on the road to Kelton, Melissa stood on the porch of the house that had become home, watching as her grandchildren played in the yard beneath the apple trees she and Yates had planted in their first year of marriage. Benjamin, now a doctor practicing in Salt Lake City, had brought his wife and 2 young sons for their annual summer visit. Hope, who had married the local banker's son and lived just down the road, sat nearby with her infant daughter in her arms, while her 3-year-old twin boys chased butterflies through the tall grass. Samuel, recently returned from 4 years at college back east, lounged on the steps, regaling his older siblings with tales of his adventures in Philadelphia. Yates emerged from the house, carrying a tray of lemonade, his dark hair now liberally streaked with silver but his eyes still bright and clear as the day they met. He set the tray on the small table and slipped an arm around Melissa's waist, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Penny for your thoughts," he murmured. Melissa leaned into his embrace, contentment filling her heart as she surveyed the legacy they had built together. "I was just thinking how fortunate we are," she replied. "All those years ago, when everything seemed darkest, I never could have imagined this life." "I knew," Yates said with quiet certainty. "The moment I saw you on that road, bruised but unbowed, protecting those babies with everything you had, I knew you were extraordinary. I just had to convince you to stay long enough to see it too." Melissa turned in his arms, studying the beloved face that had been her anchor through both joys and sorrows. "Best decision I ever made," she said softly. "Trusting you, loving you, building this life with you. No regrets." Yates asked, a familiar question between them after all these years. "Not one," Melissa replied, rising on tiptoe to kiss him, as she had countless times over their years together. "Every step of the journey led us here, and here is exactly where we belong." As their grandchildren's laughter filled the air around them, Melissa remembered the promise Yates had made that first night that she would never be hit again. He had kept that promise and so many more, teaching her day by day what true love looked like. Not the desperate passion that had led her into Edward's arms, but the steady, enduring love that had bloomed between her and Yates, growing stronger with each passing year. From the broken, frightened woman on the road to the confident grandmother she had become, the journey had been long, sometimes difficult but always worthwhile. And through it all, Yates had been beside her, her partner, her protector, her heart's true home. "I love you," she whispered against his lips. "And I love you," he replied, the words as fresh and true as the first time he had spoken them in that hidden valley so many years before. "Always have, always will." Together, they turned to watch their family, the living testament to the power of courage, second chances, and love that heals instead of hurts, the legacy they would leave to a world they had made just a little bit better by finding each other that moonlit night on the road to Kelton.